Hi everyone and welcome to session 4 in our rental reforms series. My name is Anthony and joining with me today is Maya again. Welcome Maya.
Thank you.
Today we're talking all things rental agreements and notices. A lot has changed in the space of the notices with a few new ones coming in and a few ones being taken out that we're no longer serve. So we'll jump right in with the rental agreements first. We have touched on, I guess, a bit of the extended version of this during other sessions and what makes up now rental agreements. There's different components in that. But Maya, do you just want to sort of touch on, I guess, the main sort of changes that have come in from rental agreements?
Yes, so the main ones, of course, the terminology that has been changed. For the leases, now it's being called rental agreements. For landlords, being called rental provider, and tenants are called renters. Now, the new regulations also basically classifies like different types of lease agreements, or the rental agreements, I should say. They classify for any rental agreements from 6 to 12 hours, like up to 5 years, as a short fixed term. If it's more than 5 years, then it will be classified as a long fixed term agreement. And then after that, we are going to have the periodic agreement as well, so like month, 2 month agreement basically with the renters.
Yep. I think with the new rental agreements, we can no longer ask for any rental price for the bond. Where it used to be any rental that was above $350 per week, you could essentially nominate the amount that we would like as a bond. So at $350 per week, it's $1,521 per month. So we could then ask for $2,000, $3,000. That's now been increased to $900. So any rent up to $900 per week, we have to ask just for 1 month's bond on that end. With the long-term leases, what are some of the things that have changed around that?
Yeah, so basically they allow the rental providers to request a bond top-up from the renters. So if the renters going to have like an additional 5 years into the tenancy, yes, like the rental provider can ask for extra bond amount to be paid as long as they give the renters 120 days notice in writing to request for the additional bond payment. Now, with the long fixed term, slightly different with the standard fixed term tenancy, or like the short fixed terms, that's what being called right now. It's just because the renters and rental provider can also make an agreement if they would like to do certain alterations or updates or change the fixtures. As long as they make the agreements prior signing the rental agreement, and they can write it down on the rental agreement as well, then renter can just go ahead without asking the permission again.
Yep. That's right, go on.
Yeah, so and then the other bits that they kind of add as well for the long fixed terms, they put extra terms in case the tenants needs to break the lease. It's just because like 5 years fixed term tenancies, like it's this very long commitment basically. So just in case renters need to leave early, of course they can do that, but it's also specified the amount that they need to pay. They have to pay 1 month's rent for every full year remaining on the agreement, up to maximum 6 months as well. So it's just in case. So back in the days, like with the standard fixed terms, like short fixed term, the tenants who needs to break the lease, they still need to cover the rental provider's cost to find a new tenant, but it's more about the agreements between both sides. They still needs to cover for the advertising fee, the fees to relet the property, and also keep paying the rent until the new tenant or the new renters is found. But it's not like a set with the length of the rent that they need to keep paying.
Okay. Yep. And then there's also some safety-related activities with the rental agreements, including the additional regarding the...
Yeah, that's true. So those terms now included on the rental agreement, including about the rights and obligations of the tenants. That's the standard, like the minimum standards requirements. That's also included on the rental agreements with the new regulations. But we touched base about those topics already.
Yep. So with I guess we don't have too many leases. I don't think we've had one for a very long time that's been more than 5 years. So a lot of our leases would fall into a short term or short fixed term arrangement, which is between 6 to 5 years. But I think that would probably be more so prevalent around school zones and those sorts of things where where a renter would have possibly 2 children that will be attending a public school that is in a zone, and they might want to have security around the fact that they have got the property for 7 or 8 years. And I guess it gives the owners some security too that they've got some income coming in there, and also gives them a bit of security that if they are aware to break the lease, there's some extra sort of costs that the renter would have to pay towards the rental provider. My notices, this is something that we were all sort of sitting at the edge of our seats waiting to know what these were and how these were going to affect our rental providers. I think the biggest one is around rental arrears, and I've had a few discussions with some owners about this. The 5-strike policy. Explain that to us.
Okay, so rental providers still can give notice to vacate for renters if they are more than 14 days late on rent, and if the renter pays the unpaid rent on the date or it's right before the termination date on that notice, then that notice is void. They still can apply to VCAT as well, to the Tribunal for Possessions Order, if the renter does not pay for the unpaid rent before the terminations dates, what's written on that notice. However, please note that the Tribunal can issue possession order or allow the renters to pay via payment plans. That's when they basically receive 4 strikes or 4 opportunities. Try to, becomes good renters, like try to pay their rent on time. So if more than 4 notices to vacate are issued, so renter in a 12 months period, then the renters only has like 1 more chance basically. So on the 5th notice to vacate, then the rental provider can apply to VCAT for the possession order, also called eviction notice. Please note that the strikes are cleared at the end of 12 months. So if there are more than notices during that time, so they're going to just clear it out and then give more opportunities for the renters after 12 months period, basically.
So every 12 months it resets.
Exactly.
Okay. And this will obviously will wait a bit of a wait and see sort of space if sort of VCAT looks at prior sort of years and on that, so you can there's still the opportunity to go to VCAT there, so that'll just be a bit of a wait and see how that sort of filters out over the next couple of the next 12 months at least anyway. Rent increases, so before we were able to do sort of rent increases every 6 months. Where is that at the moment?
So it's limited to once every 12 months now. Now we also need to supply and advise the renter the method or the reason for the increase to be justified. They also can challenge, of course, the rent if they believe that the increase is too high. Now, the 4 most common methods that are being used to calculate the rent increases. So we can use the CPI or the Consumer Price Index. We can use the statewide rent index. Or we set up a fixed percentage increase that we increase with the renter, or also just fixed dollar amounts as well. So normally we just include the comparisons, like whatever comparable market price that we can find in close proximity to the areas, and then we advise and explain to the tenant this is how we'll calculate the rental increase basically.
A couple of other notices is ending the tenancy and giving notice to a tenant at the end of, or notice to vacate at the end of the tenancy. Are we still able to do that?
Yes, but only for the first fixed term agreement though. So if we enter into a new fixed term agreement with a new tenant and we feels like it looks like the tenant or the renter's not going to keep doing the obligations basically as the renter, we only have this opportunity to request the tenants to vacate at the end of their fixed term lease, because if they enter into a rental renewal agreement, then we cannot ask the tenants to move out anymore.
There's also a couple of the notices here too. What are the couple of the biggest ones that have changed with the new reforms?
Yeah, so because of that, so back in the days, if we request the tenants to move out at the end of their fixed term lease, even though we have already served the notice, normally we need to wait until the ends, like the date of the end of the fixed term lease. But now they don't need to wait anymore. The minute we issue them the notice to vacate, the 90 days notice, then they can choose to vacate by the specified date, or if they wish to leave earlier, they can give the rental provider a returns like 14 days notice as well in writing.
Yep. Okay. The other one from a sales perspective, before we sort of keep on going there, there is a new notice that's come out, which is an intent to sell. One, which is once a rental provider decides they are wanting to sell the property, they need to provide the tenant with, or the renter with a 14-day notice that they intend to sell the property. That notice has to be served before any sort of marketing or anything starts on the property, which is a bit of a change, because normally we would just sort of have a chat to the tenant and say, this is the process, and do that. And we've been very good at sitting down with renters and explaining the sales process to them. But this now is another layer onto that, which is it will have to be served before any sort of marketing is commenced. Now, with that, Maya, is there anything sort of else on the back of the sales side of things?
Not for the sales. Well, yes, just because that's part of the disclosure statements. It's important for us to serve the disclosure statements initially. It's like before we sign the fixed term agreements, if the rental provider is ready, it's like assign sales agents basically, or they have plans to sell the property, they do need to disclose that to the tenant, because otherwise they have the rights to give the 14 days notice. So basically it says that it's a reduced notice of intention to vacate, because we don't disclose that information to the tenant. So they believe that the tenants or the renters has every right to start funding another property for them to move.
And that goes on to the rest of the notices. So as soon as we serve a notice to vacate now, they no longer have to wait out that 60-day period. They can return a 14-day notice.
Exactly.
On that.
Yeah. So because now that's part of the requirement as well. So we must provide a valid reasons to end a rental agreement. For example, if we need to put the property for sale, if we need to change the use of the premises, whether they're going to use it for something else, like for business purposes, for example, if they need to demolish the property, if the rental providers or the immediate family needs to move in, we no longer can serve a notice to vacate without any reasons. We do need to specify the reasons. And as what Anthony said, it's like the minute we serve the notice, the tenant has every right. They can choose and wait to move out by the specified date, or give us a written 14 days notice. The tenants also has rights as well, though, to give 14 days notice of intentions to vacate to the rental provider if they're in the situation where they need special personal care, if they need a temporary crisis accommodation, or if they are accepted into social housing. So that's part of the category as well, that the new regulations give the tenants more protections, basically, in case they need to vacate early.
Okay. And then there's keeping pets without consent. Now there's the rental provider can give a 28-day notice to vacate on this one here. So what does that entail? Do we know much about that?
Yeah, so the new laws basically allow renters to have pets as long as they ask the rental provider's consent before they adopt the pet, and the rental providers cannot unreasonably refuse the request. However, there's certain situations basically where they choose to exclude pets from their property. They can do that by applying to VCAT. If VCAT approve that request, and then the tenants will go ahead and then get a pet without their consent, then of course the rental providers can issue the 28 days notice. And the renter perhaps will be given the opportunity as well by VCAT to rectify. If they fail to comply with the VCAT order within 14 days, then they can just serve the 28 days notice. More about notices as well, though. So now the new regulations give more protections for us, the agents, rental providers, and also for our tradies and tradies like plumber, electricians who come to do some works. So in case that they believe the renters endanger the safety for other residents and neighbors of the agents and also the rental providers, we can issue them notice of intentions to vacate immediately and request to end a rental agreement. If they seriously threaten or intimidate the rental providers or the tradies as well, the contractors, we can serve them and request them to vacate within 14 days, basically. So There's also extra protection for us.
There's a bit to go through there. There's a lot of obviously changes that have happened, and a lot that I guess we've got to sort of had to get our heads around in terms of the notices. But again, property managers that are working with us are well trained and versed in all these areas now with the new reforms, and we'll get on top of it and know sort of how and we can execute these notices and still serve those. So, Maya, is there anything else we sort of wanted to cover off on today?
We touch base on the most important changes, basically, the updates that we have, because in the end of the day, the Residential Tenancies Act still the Residential Act 1997, but they just input new regulations, basically, that we need to follow.
Beautiful. So, look, if you've got any questions, please feel free to give our office a call or send an email through to your property manager. Love to get some feedback, and if you've got any sort of questions, and we'll be able to even get to those maybe next time in our next video. Maya, thank you so much for joining me. Again, thank you all for tuning in and watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time. See ya.